My name's Dante Silva, and my project is on the development of argument and critical thinking, from Aristotle to Tolman. So first, it all kind of starts out in the beginning. Aristotle was born and worked around 324 BC, and he had a lot of ideas regarding philosophy and argument. So those ideas were first introducing the issue, presenting your main points and thesis, then presenting your case, addressing the opposition, providing your proof, and presenting the conclusion. So I thought at first we'd kind of walk through an example of Aristotle's form of argument, and maybe we could walk through it around a viewpoint of schools and education. So one could argue that the school system is not working, that there's a lot of students with different talents and different skill sets and different minds, and the school system doesn't work to benefit all of them. For example, some students may end up feeling confused because they're not the same as everyone else, and that's something that needs to be fixed. So another thing that I can provide is data. So students that get A's feel happy, while students that get things as low as B minuses just feel bad. And then the next thing I would do is provide a counter argument, and that could be that schools provide different programs for different types of students. Now, while that's true, these programs can often alienate certain students, leave them feeling still confused, and also have further issues with self-esteem down the road. So ultimately, that's not the best solution. Now, what we do need is change. We need to change our education system, and this is part of the conclusion and providing your proof part of Aristotle's form of argument. Now, for example, I would argue that my change would be making the school system more conducive to individual students and unique skill sets, so that each student can become a functioning member of society and work to better not only their local environment, but the entire world. So, that was kind of Aristotle's form of argument, basically. So, as I stated earlier, Aristotle was a Greek philosopher. This is an interesting picture of him, and he was born and worked around 324 BC. Now, as Europe kind of progressed, they went into the Dark Ages, and a lot of his works were kind of forgotten. People were dying of the plague, people worked in kingdoms, and they didn't really read Greek, they just tried to translate from Latin. And so as a result, a lot of his work was lost. However, that all kind of ended around 1250, thanks in large part due to another guy. So what was going on in 1250? Well, people were trying to prove that God was real, and this man, St. Thomas Aquinas, was using Aristotle's forms of argument to do that. And as a result, Aristotle was kind of brought into the limelight again in this way to prove Christianity and that God was real. So this kind of also spurred the Renaissance, which was the rebirth of Western thought and philosophy, and Aristotle is now considered one of the founding fathers of Western thought and philosophy. So he played a huge role in that, and in Europe and the rest of the world as well. So after the Renaissance and building on, Aristotle's argument can be seen in lots of examples in culture and politics and beyond. For example, some of his arguments can be seen in the Declaration of Independence. They can be seen in political figures from Abraham Lincoln to those today. For example, in our own textbook, there's examples of Aristotle's arguments that are used by prominent political figures. So, after Aristotle and St. Thomas Aquinas, there's a brief gap before introducing another form of argument, and that comes later around the 1900s, and that's Carl Rogers, who made the Rogerian argument. So that also has some basic tenets. First, introducing the issue, and also introducing the opposing side, then addressing the opposition, and including examples of when that side may be valid over yours, then including your position, including your proof, and advocating for your position, and at the very least some benefits of adapting some parts of your position. So again, let's go through an example. So an example of a Rogerian argument could be in regards to uniforms. So first, you would kind of present the overall issue as well as the opposing side. So we're talking about uniforms, and maybe I'm saying that I want school uniforms. I think that uniforms are a good thing. So first, I'd address the opposite side, and I'd say that, you know what, I understand that maybe not having uniforms allows students to express their creativity and their individuality, and that can be a great thing. But now I need to address my own side, and what I'd say is that clothing does not equal your personality or your individuality. And there's a lot of examples of this. For example, let's say I buy a pair of Nike shoes. Well, Does that mean that I'm necessarily the best athlete ever? No, not really. All it means is that I can afford to buy a pair of Nike shoes. So this kind of goes into addressing that opposition, and now I need to go into addressing my own claim and my own thoughts. And that's that with uniforms, everyone is kind of put on a level playing field, and that they have the same chance and the same opportunities, and it's what's on the inside that truly matters and allows students to shine. And that can be a great thing. So that's kind of an example of a Rogerian argument. So we have that Rogerian argument, and then after that, a little bit later, but around the same time, comes the Tolman argument. So the Tolman argument also has certain important principles. Now, this one is a little bit more if the debate is strictly two-sided, not as much gray area. So you introduce the issue, then the grounds and data, then provide a warrant. And a warrant basically just shows the relevance of the claim, and we'll talk more about that later. Then the backing, the qualifier, and the rebuttal. So again, let's walk through an example of the Tolman argument. So maybe if I'm doing the Tolman argument, I have a stance, and that stance would be that Congress absolutely needs to ban all animal testing. They just need to stop animal testing on different products for different things in all forms of animal research. So that's my argument. So I would first walk through why and provide some data and evidence. So maybe my why is that lots of animals are being used for animal testing. It's kind of having negative effects on them, and it's having negative effects on us as well. And it's kind of for frivolous reasons too, only for industries such as the cosmetic industry and things that can easily test on other forms of life. Now, the next thing that I do is provide a warrant. So, a warrant can kind of be unspoken, but just understood. So, a warrant in this situation could be something like, we need to value animal lives, such as cats and dogs, over money, because no amount of money can replace an animal life. So that would be the warrant. Now, the next thing that I need to do is kind of provide a backing for this warrant, and something that could kind of further establish my argument. So that could be that I want Congress to do the ban. Well, maybe this needs to be a national thing, because if it was only state governments that passed this, then companies could just move to other states and kind of escape those laws. So that can be a kind of backing. Now, I need to supply a qualifier or a situation, and maybe this argument would not work, and that would be for medical testing. Maybe medical research can continue. Obviously, we do not want to ban medical research. Things like first aid, band-aids, and stethoscopes are all vital to human health and the development of society and human life. So obviously, that would fall beyond the scope of this argument.